hear me? Okay. One of the major problems that the global community faces today is that of global climate change. Concentrations of what are called greenhouse gases, or gases that cause a warming effect in the atmosphere, are to blame for increases in the world's temperatures. Although necessary for life on Earth, these gases are now causing many of the problems in our ecosystem. The most potentially devastating of these effects is the rise in temperature of the surface of the Earth. According to the Environmental Protection Agency, the 8 warmest years on record since 1850 have all occurred since 1998, with 2005 being the warmest of all.
Former Senate leader George Mitchell once said that if global warming was left unchecked, it would trigger meteorological chaos, raging hurricanes capable of killing millions of people, record-breaking heat waves, and profound drought that could drive Africa and the Indian subcontinent over the edge into mass starvation. These words are meant to scare the public, but in actuality have little truth to them. Mitchell implies that massive and extreme changes are imminent, and humans are responsible for them. However, climate change is natural. Milutin Milankovitch used algebraic theorems to calculate the orbit of the Earth around the Sun, to explain the seasons, and on a larger scale, to explain climate change. The theory states, as the Earth travels through space around the Sun, cyclical variations in the Earth-Sun geometry combine to produce variations in the amount of solar energy that reaches the Earth. The Earth travels around the Sun in an oval or elliptical shape. Thus, at one point in time, the Earth's distance is closer or farther away from the Sun, affecting the amount of radiation that reaches the Earth. This explains climate change. But you see, the companies that actually do lower their emissions, those are the rich companies. There is very little margin that they can reduce their CO2 emissions even more. The companies that we need to focus on are the companies in developing countries or developing countries themselves. They are the ones that don't have enough money. That's why they can't lower their CO2 emissions, because they don't have the money to do so.
This is what you just said. You said that these companies are lowering their emissions, which is the aim of our plan, to lower the carbon emissions that they make.
But the fact that developing countries can't lower their emissions and they just end up buying more credits, they don't lower their emissions at all, and that offsets the lowering that these rich companies have.
Part 2 of our plan will deal with more efficient energy, and we'll explain to you how these developing countries can lower their emissions. However, the carbon trade system does in fact lower the emissions of some of the richer countries.
But is offset by a lot of developing countries. Do you have a question?
Not even on temperature testing.
Okay. You talk about how the government needs to advertise and they need to campaign for inventive ways to save or lower CO2 emissions. Don't you agree that that's going to take a lot of money?
I would say that if the government can promote other things, they can promote a cleaner environment.
But how are they going to promote it? Through TV ads, through newspaper ads? Those take a lot of money. The government doesn't have that kind of spare money. Now, with the government in a deficit right now, it can't spend any more money on that.
Alright, so as my partner said before, step 2 of our plan advocates that the nations of the world begin to convert to renewable sources of energy. The main source of energy today is fossil fuels, but oil, natural gas, and coal are some of the main contributors of carbon in our atmosphere. These fuels also take thousands of years before they can be mined for consumption. In the United States, coal power electrical plants account for 52% of all electrical plants in the U.S., yet a study conducted by MIT found that they provide 90% of all carbon emissions resulting from electrical production. Moving to cleaner renewable sources of energy will both help the environment and provide a more sustainable source of energy. The main types of energy that the affirmative is proposing the global community consider converting to are nuclear, solar, wind, and hydroelectricity. Nuclear energy is an effective and cheap way that many nations produce their electricity. Nuclear energy uses the process of nuclear fission to create electricity. Nuclear fission is a process in which one atom splits into 2. The power that this process creates is harnessed to produce power. As of July 2008, nuclear energy accounted for about 20% of the world's power. In France, 77% of the electricity generated comes from nuclear energy. Nuclear energy is a clean form of energy. Coal-burning plants release 100 times more radioactive waste than nuclear energy, making nuclear energy a more environmentally safe option.
They began talking about the Clean Air Act, but that was in 1970. And they don't have any results until 2000, 30 years later. these government regulations and policies take a very long time to take any effect whatsoever. They also talk about carbon credit system in Europe, and I'm going to have to explain this for everyone, I think. What happens is the government sets a a level of how many carbon emissions a certain company can produce, depending on size and what sort of industry you're in. And then anyone who's under that level gets to buy credits from the government that they can sell to other companies who are over that level. So what happens is the companies who are already clean have more money to get cleaner, but the companies who aren't clean have to spend all of their money buying credits so they don't have to pay the taxes to the government on their carbon emissions. And what happens is that they no longer have the capital necessary to invest in cleaner technology. So yes, the clean companies, the companies that have money, can get cleaner. But the companies who don't have money, the companies who aren't clean yet, can't get any cleaner because all of their money is getting sucked away.
Starting off, you said that we don't have the money necessary in the United States. Where in the resolution can you tell me it says that we only have to consider the United States?
Where in your case did you talk about anything else? You said that we can implement these policies, that the United States implemented the Clean Air Act, that the United States can do all this, that we can implement a carbon credit system like they have in Europe.
Okay, let me read something for you right here. The main types of energy that the affirmative is proposing, the global community consider converting to are nuclear, solar, wind, and hydroelectric.
Yes, well, have you heard of the Kyoto Protocol? Have you heard of the, yes. That was the largest international gathering ever to talk about climate change. And what is important about it, not only that it failed entirely, but also that it did include developing nations, which are the worst polluters. None of these policies do anything with developing nations. No one's going to want to enforce that because we want to try and get those economies to grow because that's where we get all of our cheap supplies and that's where our consumer economies can actually get cheap supplies to keep us going. It's not a viable option. We can't implement this upon them.
So, while they were busy talking about how all of these things are not really going to work for our economy, they failed to realize that when he was talking about these volcanoes increasing the carbon dioxide in our environment, this was a study done by the EPA to explain why carbon dioxide was rampant in prehistory. It was not talking about the world today. The EPA suggests that the evidence for this theory is not conclusive and that alternate explanations for historic CO2 levels exist. This means that while this is one theory for how carbon dioxide levels existed in prehistoric times,
they talk about how humans are responsible for 130 times more CO2 than volcanoes. Well, here's another statistic to think about. Termites are responsible for more CO2 emissions than humans are. So I'm not sure about their statistics. Also, moving on to their case, they talk about carbon credits. These won't work, like my partner and I have said repeatedly, because the government creates these credits and businesses have to buy them, spending money, something that businesses can't do right now. Regardless of whether it's in the United States or in the world, it's not going to be very effective because, like we said, developing countries are going to have to spend money to buy these credits and they're not going to be able to get cleaner.
Alright, we're going to start off with, you are stressing a lot that we do not have the money, but where in our plan does it say we have to do this right now? Where does it say that we can't do this over time, start converting to more?
Okay, my question is for the pro side. On the carbon credit system, if you're suggesting implementing it worldwide, who's going to regulate this?
The United Nations offered to regulate it in the Kyoto Protocol. We know we can't really enforce this up to the nations, but we're urging the nations to consider these options. Because the nations themselves are going to have to take into consideration, they're going to have to take these plans, and it's going to be up to them to do this. We can't do anything in any situation globally, but we can urge them to do that. We can put our political pressure on them.
We basically can't do the carbon credits.
We can. It's worked in Europe, like we said in our case, but it's up to the nation to regulate it.